This is Tony Thompson, chilling with Boxing Beats and Rhymes.
Hank Lundy chilling with Boxing Beats and Rhymes. This is that Mayor Hardcore Mentor on Boxing Beats and Rhymes YouTube channel. Tune in because this is the place to be, man, all the time.
I am ranked number one. One! That means I'm the best.
I want to do a little review. Excuse the flu. I got the. I don't know if it's flu, but anything. I mean, with a heavy cold, I call it flu. So, yeah, I'm gonna do a review on the documentary. Not so much a review. We're gonna go over some of the points that came up in the documentary Champs, which was centered around Bernard Hopkins, Evander Holyfield, and Mike Tyson. It was a good documentary. It was good. Hopkins, born in North Philly, very impoverished area. He spoke about how his mum had to ration out the pork and beans from the tin, and the suspicions that his old man was taking drugs, abject poverty, written off by the school system. Mike Tyson revealed how both his mum and his sister were promiscuous. I'm just going to say it, well, basically in the sex trade. Lou DiBella touched upon why rich kids don't fight. Why would they fight? You know, there's got no need to fight, you know. In fact, my theory is I think rich kids can become boxers, but if you're a rich kid and you're going to go through stuff like getting knocked out cold and 15-round warfares risking serious neurological problems, and you got no need to do it, probably something wrong with you, you know. I mean, it's not the same like a boxer who gets rich and still carries on fighting. That's different. That's different because he can't change what made him from a kid. He can't change that experience from being poor and having that competitive spirit from being poor. He can't change that, so that's part of him. But if you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth and you get between the ropes like that, something wrong with you. Holyfield grew up in the A, or Atlanta, in abject poverty in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. He reminded us on a few occasions that I'm from the hood, I just don't act like I am. I like that. 75% of African American parolees are rearrested in 3 years, so guys like Hopkins, who've done a considerable stretch, have beat the odds. But he's always been beating the odds, hasn't he? Becoming the oldest world champion in boxing's history. The prison that Hopkins was in had a boxing program. I'm not sure what part of the country he was jailed, but it had a boxing program which kicked off his illustrious career. And they also had Rahway Prison, which housed such great champions, I'll hasten to add, like Dwight Muhammad Cowie. James Scott was actually a world-ranked light heavyweight while he was in jail. His fights took place in jail. He fought Cowie in jail. Cowie was actually released, but he returned to the prison to fight Bruce Scott. He actually beat Bruce Scott on points. But Bruce Scott beat the likes of Eddie Mustafa Muhammad. I meant to say James Scott, not Bruce Scott. Bruce Scott is a Jamaican fighter who used to fight out of Britain. Hard-punching light heavyweight, actually, Bruce Scott. But I'm talking about James Scott. He fought the likes of Yaki Lopez, Contenders, Bunny Johnson, and was denied a title shot by the WBA because they didn't want the exposure that they were letting convicts fight for their titles. So why did they let him get so far up the rankings? But they don't have them programs no more. Mike Tyson, he went through $300 million. $300 million in his career. Lou DiBella said Tyson didn't declare bankruptcy because it was in the interest of those he had contracts with to keep his accounts open. We heard about how Holyfield had to foreclose on his $24 million mansion and defaulted on a $10 million bank loan. They broke down what the likelihood of the average fighter caking off from putting on the gloves. The average ESPN fight purse is 15 G's. The fighter's expenses, sparring, training gear, gym hire, etc., etc., $2,000. Trainer, 10% off the top, $1,500. Manager, 33%, $4,554. The fighter's remaining purse is $6,955. And let's take into consideration that Uncle Sam has not come for him yet on the taxes. They have neuropsychological testing in baseball, but not in boxing. Someone hasn't acknowledged this. The NFL paid out $700 million to former players who suffered traumatic brain injuries. Remember when the WBC was doing them green watches, selling them green watches, what looked like the belts? Well, they could have been auctioning them, I can't quite remember, for fighters who had fallen on hard times. Barkley was the first recipient of that, and I haven't heard him do anything since then. So what's happened to that? There was rumours that it was put into a high interest account, all the money that was raised, and there was a lot of skimming off the top, claiming administration fees, but say no more. A woman named Maureen Schaefer, who was an advisor for the Sanford Center, said 90% of boxers endure some form of brain injury during their careers. Wow. And they showed this diagram, an animated diagram, where when you get hit, the brain bounces backwards and then comes back forward, and wow. They spare you one single MRI to turn pro, and there are no follow-ups after that. Stingy motherfuckers. I mean, there's no commission though. It makes no sense, because amateur careers are nowhere near as grueling as pro careers in general. Just nowhere near. Young dude, still got a lot of his health about him. So yeah, you're bound to, not bound, but more likely younger fighters will pass the MRI before the older fighters who've taken the severe beatings in the pros. So if you get an MRI at the start of your career, and then you don't get no more as you go on, I mean, you're going to be fighting 10 rounders, 12 rounders, loads of them. Sparring is longer, harder. A lot of fighters have to supplement their ring earnings with sparring. I mean, just the nature of pro fighting is different as well. They encourage you to come off the balls of your foot and hit with power as a pro. So it's ridiculous, really. It's crazy when you think about it. Evander Johnson, they went through his demise. He said to Lou DiBella in the dressing room after the fight with Jesus Chavez, former Floyd Mayweather Jr. victim, that he had a headache. He was sorry for letting everyone down. Then he collapsed, and that was sad, man. That was sad. And you saw his leg not responding, dragging on the ground. He was moving, he was boxing, he was fighting, but he couldn't lift his left leg, I believe it was, off the floor. And crazy. I remember discussing it with my friends at the time, and one of them said, how comes his corner didn't notice the irregular movement from how he normally moves? But hindsight is always 20/20, isn't it? Evander Holyfield is now a goodwill ambassador. He's brought Mike Tyson on board to help kids around the world who are impoverished. We saw Holyfield in the Olympics, in the '84 Olympics, when he hit Kevin Barry, when the referee, quote unquote, allegedly called break, and he shouldn't have been disqualified. He was going to win that Olympics easy. He was killing everyone in there. He was smashing everyone to pieces, and there was no one who could stop him. But terrible decision to deny him his gold medal. Holyfield is the type of dude, if I had a son, I'd use as a role model. That was a young Holyfield in '84 in Los Angeles, and if you saw his response to him getting disqualified in what was the biggest moment of his career up until then, he didn't complain, he didn't whinge, he just accepted it. Obviously he was disappointed. He didn't punch the ring ropes, he didn't do anything. He went to his corner and he let the commentators, he let the American commentators do the complaining for him. And yeah, they were pissed. They were really pissed. Yeah, if I had a son, I'd let him be a role model, because his calmness and acceptance of taking responsibility. He is a really consummate professional and human being. But then again, I mean, I'm saying I let him be a role model. Look what he done to his finances. So what appears to be all good sometimes ain't all good. There you go. But he hasn't bitched about that once, has he? You mean, you hear Mike talk. Mike always talks about the bloodsuckers, the leeches, Don King, Robin Givens. You haven't heard Holyfield complain about anybody who could have potentially be someone to target in terms of blaming where his finances, but you never heard him complain once. Hopkins, a fighter who is often criticised because of his defensive approach to boxing, self-preservation approach, is putting it on himself to be the guy to fight for the rights of the fighter. To paraphrase, he's going to be in a lot of people's chests, and he's going to question the powers to be, why reform in boxing is taking so long and just stagnant. This has just been a stagnant process since the inception of Queensberry rules boxing. Warning fighters to get their own accounts and attorneys. And in the wake of Braden Smith passing away, I done a video on it. That's an Australian fighter. He passed away after a fight on Saturday. You must always be reminded that boxing is the art of self-defense. That's why men taught their sons how to box or sent them to learn how to box to defend themselves. The philosophy of any kind of fighting, whether military, combat sports, is to defend yourself. It's defense first. It's to minimize harm to yourself and those around you. Pay attention to language, you know. Military is the most severe, definitive form of fighting, military. They don't have offense budgets, they have defense budgets. You don't have a ministry of offense, you have a ministry of defense. So no disrespect when you hear guys like Terry Norris, who was very entertaining, and so was Meldrick Taylor, but they were prepared to get hit to administrate punishment. That's how they fought. And you hear the speech is really messed up badly. Pugilist syndrome. It's got to be fighters like Hopkins, it's got to be up to fighters like Hopkins and Floyd to talk for the boxers. If you fight to your character type without stereotyping, it could often suggest recklessness. So more than likely it will take the thinking fighters to fight for the cause of other boxers. Just my opinion. But that's it for now, folks. That's it for now. Peace.